Many call it a cult film, but we're calling it a classic. There can be only one. Only one what? Stay with us to find out as we discuss 1986's Highlander. We'll be right back. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Dean Legiro here with you behind the microphone. Eric Huber in Maryland, from what he just revealed. I didn't know that. I thought he was in Barbados doing this show, but he just revealed he's actually in the States.
I thought that was top secret information.
Yeah. Maryland is actually called the Barbados of the U.S. So,
well, it feels like it.
Then what's Jersey?
Oh my God, the humidity here is ridiculous.
If Maryland is Barbados, what's New Jersey?
Well, DC is swampland. It's not. It used to be just nothing but swampland. So
that's the border.
We're like 20 minutes away from DC.
There you go.
On a good day.
It's the border of Gator Country. We know that.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering who that gentleman is, that's Roland making his second appearance with us. Welcome aboard for another great sci-fi fantasy film that I'm picking up a trend with this gentleman.
Yeah.
I asked him if he wanted to do Shakespeare. He's like, thou shalt not. He said, "Thou shalt not ask me that ever again."
Obviously, I didn't date much. That's what it
was. and of course, Nick Leshy with us, always great. He's got a blog, City of Kick. You should check that out. He does a lot of entertainment and pop culture blogging. We'll drop a link to that great blog in the show notes. Welcome aboard as well, Nick.
Thank you. Looking forward to talking about this.
10th time now?
Oh man, I stopped counting.
Something like that, right? Yeah.
Stop counting.
We're gonna stop. Yeah, I'm running out of. I've been making a notch on the windowsill every time, and now my landlord thinks I'm eating the wood. So I have to just stop. I have to just stop doing.
It's like Saturday Night Live when they have like the 5 Timers Club or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, you surpassed that,
the robe,
kind sir. Yes.
We'll have to send you the new and improved.
Thank
hat.
you. New and improved hat.
New and improved hat. Maybe
nice.
Established. I don't know if you get one before Eric is going to drive up to see me. And I won't know he's here. I'm just gonna my car will be spray painted like scumbag.
I'll be
the tires will be
standing in the corner.
There's a man outside underneath the
Barbados written on the side of the vehicle.
Greetings from the Barbados, U.S.
There you go.
So we're talking about a great film today. Before we get to that, though, you know what? Check us out on social media. We're at 3324 Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. It's a great group of like-minded individuals that love classic film, classic movies, new music, new movies as well. We cover it all. So go ahead and dig into all the great stuff we have there. Plus, if this is your first episode, we've got a back catalog of a lot of great music and movie content to check out as well. So won't you do that? That would be great. And then, you know what? Since I'm going for it, if you listen to us on Spotify, give us a rating. You can give us up to 5 stars.
Yeah. And give us some and comments too. We always welcome feedback and comments. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right?
Yeah.
Is it? Are you enjoying it? And then, of course,
Eric always asks what we're doing wrong, so that means that goes to him. He wants to know what we're doing wrong. I just want to hear the good stuff.
Well,
I want the gravy.
Well, yeah. Well,
he wants the burnt toast. I want the gravy.
And of course, we always welcome ideas for subjects for potential episodes and
absolutely,
and the live show as well. So we like seeing
that's
faces
right. We do live
there.
shows as well.
Yep.
Every other Wednesday we do live shows too. So if you want to come and heckle and harass, you can do that. The internet is free. It's free to join, so we won't charge. We'll we welcome that as well. So let's focus in on what we've got here. This movie was one of the first one. We talk a lot, say this a lot on our episodes when we talk about music and movies, but when I was compiling my original list of stuff to present or stuff that we wanted to talk about, this was one of the first films that I wrote on the list. Just because we didn't get to it right away doesn't mean it wasn't there. And Highlander, for I know for Eric and I, speaking for Eric, is a much cherished film for us. And that's why I said in the beginning, a lot of people consider this a cult film. We consider it a classic. So let's get into the stats, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll kind of get into the discussion about it. So this was released in March of 1986, directed by Russell Mulcahy, story by Gregory Wyden, and I think it's important just to throw his name out there just because of his circumstances of his screenplay are pretty interesting. It had a $19 million budget. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, it was a
$12.8 million
clunker.
box office. So it bombed. As far as box office goes and return on investment, it didn't make back what it was supposed to do. Despite the star power. And we'll roll into the cast a little bit. There's 4 main players. You've got Christopher Lambert, not Lambert. You've got Roxanne Hart, the great Clancy Brown, and of course, Mr. Sean Connery. So that rounds out like your main cast. Now, let's go around. I want to find out a little bit from Nick and Roland what your connection is to this film, or when did you first see it? Roland, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Actually, I saw it on HBO growing up as a super son in Brooklyn. We got free cable when I was a kid, which meant actually only HBO, so it wasn't cable. It was Brooklyn. So I remember watching this repeatedly with my brother and in our little adjoining studio apartment. That's how you spread your family when you were a super. You rented an apartment for your kids. So you got the free apartment and you rented a studio. So me and my brother slept in the studio, down the hall from my parents. But I remember watching this at night, and I loved it. I'll be honest with you, when I was a kid, I loved it. Reviewing it and being the critical old man with the gray hair now, I found it interesting. It's a compelling story. That's my connection. I think that's always been part of it. It's a compelling story. Sort of the movement of it. You have Clancy Brown, like you mentioned. That guy has been in everything. I remember I first saw him in Bad Boys when I was a kid, and he was a presence in that movie.
The Viking.
And, and all the way to today when I see him in everything, I'm like, I know that guy. Yeah. And Sean Connery, which he just brings Sean Connery to everything. Of course. But, so that is sort of my so that is like my connection with it. I probably found it a little humorous back then too, because there are some like
it's got some moments of levity. Yeah,
it's got a little campiness to it. It's got the fight scenes are really campy, and
it's got a little bit of a light touch where needed, and that's the
right.
I think that's the sci-fi fantasy part of it too.
Like,
you hear a lot of sci-fi and action. You don't really hear sci-fi fantasy thrown around a lot anymore.
Yeah, you don't.
I think it's a lost term. Nick, what about you? When did you catch this first?
I would say it's exactly the poster child of what a cult movie experience is.
No.
I didn't hear about it. I mean, I consider myself a movie fan since I was a kid, but I didn't really hear about it until I was at a graduation party, and in one of the rooms, everybody's around the TV just watching television, and I'm like, what are they watching? And they're like, Highlander. And I heard Islander, and I'm like, what is it, a hockey movie? What is that? I literally knew nothing about it, and I'm seeing sword fights, and I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I went back home, I went to Blockbuster, and I got and I saw it, and I'm like, I really liked it, So I think if you think about cult movies, people who went to see it at the movie theater, maybe they were let down by some of the campiness, or or they loved it, but nobody else heard about it. The marketing maybe was bad. Whatever it was, it got its second life through video and through cable, right? And it became a franchise, right? And I still dare say this is one of those movies that maybe never should have had a sequel, never should have had anything
We'll get
else.
into that.
But that's how I discovered it. Exactly like the cult, what you identify as a cult movie, those people who kind of gravitated to it and like, okay, this is a cool thing after its initial failure at the box office.
Yeah. All right. Eric?
I think one of the reasons...
roll out your story.
Well, it's our story, isn't it?
That's what I was waiting for. I was laying it out I was teeing it up.
That's one of the reasons why we do this podcast is because, and the reason why this particular movie is special, because Dean and I had seen it together in the theater, and we were all over it. We knew nothing about it. Of course, we didn't have the advent of, knowing what was to come, but Dean was like, we got to check this movie out. Queen's doing the soundtrack and, and all that. So we were in. So, so we saw it together. So it's one of those special moments where we, Dean and I didn't really see a lot of films together growing up. But this was definitely one of those movies, and it had to be talked about, so.
Yeah, I think we grabbed our friend Johnny too, right? Wasn't Johnny with us? Our friend Johnny.
Oh yeah.
This was the era when we would go see it. Just a lot of stuff, like
everything.
We were still unjaded by film. So 1986, 20 years old, just on the cusp of 20. We would still just go whatever was playing, and this obscure film like Highlander was playing, and it was kind of like, we went on Central Avenue in Yonkers to the Central Plaza. I remember it was playing in the upstairs theater, which was like the smaller theater.
That's right.
Where the first run movies were in the main floor, and the stuff that was like, not so sure about would be upstairs. And we went upstairs. And it was an experience like I hadn't had before. Especially in that era of the mid 80s, you had Back to the Future that had just come out. Return of the Jedi was what, 83. So this, was a fertile ground for this kind of stuff to come out, and for people, and some filmmakers were trying to capitalize on it, but Highlander wasn't that. And especially when I watched it now, and I watched it with a critical eye, meaning not watching it to enjoy it, but watch it as a film. I actually am going to advocate that this is actually it's more of an epic film than people think it is. Especially with the restored footage. So this is one that Eric and I have been like advocates for. Like we could say we knew Clancy Brown when, and we could say we knew Highlander. Like we can claim this movie as our own because we were one of the few people, like, what did it make? $12.8 million. So about $13 of that Eric and I contributed to.
That's absolutely right.
So we've got to share. Yep. We've got to share.
You guys, you're a stockholder.
We got to share.
We're a stockholder in this film, and it was one of those movies where
we're an emotional shareholder.
At that point, I think at that point we kind of dare I say that we almost outgrew Star Wars at this point, and we were ready for more adult-driven sort of fantasy content. I love going back to like the heavy metal magazines and like the Frank Frazetta fantasy art and all that stuff, Conan the Barbarian and all that kind of thing. This was right up that alley as well, and it had that historical context to it, which I'm really amazed that Sean Grady had, one of our other guests, is not here tonight to talk about this, because he's such a history buff, and I think he would really, really dig this film. But yeah, I mean, we just from the get-go, I mean, it's a movie that is, it is epic. I think, not a lot of people don't give it enough credit, but it's just so gritty looking and so ugly looking. And, but that was the style in the day, the MTV sort of look. And that's what I miss today. It's like everything looks so clean and digital and just, and no matter how you try to make it look like it did back in the day, you just can't. You can't duplicate that. The graininess of it, the way that the scenes transitioned into one to other. I'd never seen anything like that before. He did a more magnificent job with those edits of like the fish tank, for example. And then there's the scene of them in the water and the boat and, all of that stuff. So, Russell Mulcahy has to get very probably underrated and underappreciated just on this film alone. Like Eric said, the transitions, the dolly, a lot of dolly work, a lot of helicopter shots. Yeah, you don't get that in a fly-by-nighter film. You get cut rate, the budget, trying to cheap that stuff out. So when I watched it again, and I'm marveling at some of those wide shots in Scotland when they're fighting, when they're training. And the dolly that's going around at the end in the last sword. I mean, that's kind of, that's not low budget filmmaking. That's someone that's got a specific vision and a specific style. Right. That Russell Mulcahy, he was really known for making he was a music video director is what he was. Yeah. So he kind of cut his teeth on being artsy in 3 minute, in 3 minute snippets, right? You can kind of work your way through and try different things with different artists and kind of develop this really flashy style. Didn't really parlay it into too much afterwards. I mean, he did The Shadow, which I kind of is underrated with Alec Baldwin. A lot of people don't like it. But,
that's a good film. I actually like it.
Yeah. But this one, he really kind of, it was his second feature, and he really kind of put a visual stamp on this film that, it's dynamic, it's kinetic. The camera's moving, but in a good way, not in a choppy way that you can't see what's going on. He really, he dances around characters and gives them room to move if need be, and doesn't try and crowd it, and then you feel like you don't know what's going on. So that let's go back just for a little history, and then we'll geek out. I said the story was by Gregory Wyden. Gregory Wyden wrote this script while he was an undergrad at UCLA. So this was kind of like a project that he was just kind of working on. It doesn't resemble a lot of what the film would be, but he wrote this. And it ended up selling it for $200,000. So that's not bad for someone who's still in college.
It's a great story.
usually you got to get out of film school and pay your dues, and no one wants to read what you got, right?
Yeah.
And you're sending spec scripts to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So I think his teacher saw this and said, "You got to get this. He's got to get this." It was
hands. A terrific story. It's that one of those. I mean, God, I mean, it's such a tall tale, of course, but the epic nature of it, and just the way he goes through history, and having all of those scenes, and you have to know a little bit about. I suppose he probably did some research on Scottish, Highlander life, and that kind of thing. So the clans and all that. So that's what I loved about it, was bringing that into it and the history, and then filming it on location in Scotland. We can't say that enough. That alone it's gorgeous there.
They didn't use Vancouver or now it's popular. Let's go to Canada and film it. And
Barbados, Maryland.
Barbados, Maryland.
Maryland.
Right. So, Roland, what do you think of this? Originally up for the role of Connor Macleod, Kurt Russell.
I read that too.
And Mark Singer to a lesser extent. Mark Singer is kind of a name from the 80s, Beastmaster. Kurt Russell was tossed around. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that would have been kind of interesting to see where it goes. The dialogue with Christopher Lambert that's and even back then it felt a little weird with him, because it definitely, this style of storytelling, Kurt Russell fit this era. He fit the film of this era entirely. From Escape from New York and every other action thing that he sort of popped off with, and I could definitely see him doing this character as he fit that era. To me, like you were saying, this is I think it's a DP film. It's definitely a director of photography film. Some of those shots are amazing. They brought in steady cams. They had those fly cams going over for the arena shot in the beginning.
The wrestling shot in the beginning.
That's amazing. That was an amazing shot. I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this, the camera work. I definitely see the MTV elements too. Again, working almost like a director of photography point of view, like Cologne shots of split screen, really close up, and things happen in the background, and looking at the pupils. Storytelling, it felt very independent, grungy, Carpenter, Kurt Russell type of actors as leads. I definitely see that. So it's an interesting combination of those elements, where you get a DP person who I want these beautiful camera shots, these big camera shots where the money is in there, and really tell a story with those big camera shots. And then you want that very grunge, that very comic book Conan the Barbarian too. You could have easily said Chris Lambert was Conan the Barbarian, jumping in a time jump, and it would have fit. That's why he wore a raincoat through the whole thing. I mean, this is all like new noir.
That was his style.
That was his cape, his lion skin of Hercules that he had to wear in almost in every shot. So it was really interesting. Kurt Russell, I think he would have nailed it probably too. The tempo that and the beats of the film work with a Kurt Russell lead.
Nick, what do you think? Do you think he could? I can't imagine, and I don't know. Maybe check me on this. Has Kurt Russell ever done a film where he's done an accent?
Did Chris accent? But did Chris Lambert really do an accent?
Well, he tried. I think he tried.
Wait, before you get to that,
he did get to that.
Yeah, he did that. I mean, he had the brogue going on, which he pulled off well. He had to, he needed a dialogue coach for it. That's always been my issue with Christopher Lambert. I call him Lambert as well.
I call him Lambert. But he gets a T from me every time. He gets
the language was always
the hard T.
Yeah, I feel bad for him because it's obvious the language was always an issue with him when doing English language films.
He didn't speak English when he got cast.
Greystoke, he was great because he didn't have much dialogue. Right?
He didn't have to speak.
But he's got those piercing eyes and the brow, and just like very intense for those kind of characters.
Oh, the look.
He's got a five head.
He definitely does. Especially with his Connor Macleod. I don't even know if that was a wig, because there's one scene where he sticks his head in the bucket and it gets wet, and I don't think you do that with a wig. Maybe there was weaves in the back, but regarding Christopher Lambert, I think because of
this is his greatest movie.
His muddled accent, somewhat, it gives him that ethereal quality that he's been through time. Especially when he lands in New York, and the cop says, like, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "Lots of different places."
That's a good point.
That that he's not just Scottish anymore. He's an amalgamation of just all the experiences and places that he's done. So by the time he arrives in 1986, it's Christopher Lambert with this French, Scottish, American,
it's some kind of a weird
amalgamation of a world, like a world accent kind of a thing.
It fits
right?
the story. It really
way.
Fits the story.
I just think
it fits that sci-fi style, like you're saying. It does
look at Sean Connery too. I mean, you got a French actor, playing a Scotsman, and then you have Sean Connery, who's
a Scotsman playing
he's a Scotsman playing an Egyptian pretending to be a Spaniard. Right. So you got so what to Dean's point though. You could argue, that's exactly what happened. He became, he was Egyptian, but then he, through time he became
Scottish,
acclimated to the Spaniard, way of life or whatever, So this wasn't just they kind of had to blend in, I guess, through time.
I don't think Connery tried. I don't think Connery tried to do.
No, he didn't try.
He was supposedly working on it. Okay, so he was supposedly working on some type of a Spanish accent. That reading in the beginning, what there's like a plate with the stuff, and he reads it. He actually recorded that in the bathroom while he was working on his accent. Like he was trying to figure out like what the accent was going to be. He recorded that and he sent it over to the producers because they needed the voiceover, and they just used that exact recording from the bathroom.
Wow.
That's we've been through time or whatever, with the gathering. Which is interesting, but you know what? Connery doesn't need to try. I don't want to hear Connery trying to do a different accent. I want him, he's saying he's Egyptian. There was no Egyptian it's Connery.
He does have those look. He does have the features. I mean, he's got those like really dark.
They kind of darkened him up a little bit.
The eyebrows, and you could mascara. Say that he has a little bit of maybe
Mediterranean basin.
Exactly. Yeah. That look.
He could be any one of that. Portuguese, Moroccan. He could be anything.
I mean, he was in Time Bandits too. Like he played Agamemnon in Time Bandits. Like so, he was the Greek character there. So but yeah. Interesting. It was just a very interesting casting. Then you got don't forget. I mean, this is technically a British-made film, so you probably had a lot of British actors playing American actors, like the dude that gets the commando dude. He was in Empire Strikes Back. He was Rogue 2. He was the guy in the snowspeeder who says, I found them. That's him. In that scene, and he's a British actor.
There's a couple of Star Wars connections to this film. Nick, I know you want to jump in, but let me get this out before I forget. The guy that did the sword play choreography he worked with Vader on his sword play for the Star Wars film. So they got him.
Another connection.
The woman that plays Rachel, not the little girl, but the woman, she's married to Dennis Lawson, who's Wedge Antilles.
Okay.
From Star Wars.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
So there's a little Star Wars thing there. And then you can't dismiss that this movie has the Obi-Wan Luke Skywalker feel to it of the Padawan and the Master versus the Dark Knight, the ultimate villain in black. So there's some parallels there. But Nick, what were you you wanted to jump in. What was it?
Oh, you guys were talking about Sean Connery, and I'd read that he only had a week to do this, to squeeze this into his schedule. And he's like, there's no way. When he looked at the script, he's like, there's no way we can do all this in a week. And he had a bet, I guess, with the director, and the director was like, trust me. And he got it done in a week. So,
well, let's talk for a minute about Sean Connery in 1986, because I don't know how he didn't have time, because, well, he kind of was. At this point, Sean Connery was like the Michael Caine. At this point in their career, they were doing everything, but he wasn't big yet. Untouchables was still a year away. Okay. He hadn't gotten that second, once he was in Untouchables, he got that second wind in his career, or third wind, because he would win an Oscar, and that propelled him into Entrapment, The Rock. And he just became, Hunt for Red October. He became something totally different. In the 80s, he was plugging away at like Zardoz, and he made a great film, The Name of the Rose, the same year, which is a fantastic film.
Yes,
no one's you want to talk about a cult film?
That was a great film. Yep.
Watch The Name of the Rose. But Sean Connery was still a name, but not a big name. It's kind of like
his heyday was the 60s, and
now we look back and it's like, oh, Sean Connery is in it. But at the time, it was kind of like, we were able to get Sean Connery.
Well,
which is a little different.
Bond stigma too. I mean, a lot of people were still, he's still James Bond, and in fact, he did make a Bond movie in the '80s, the remake to Thunderball,
Never Say Never Again, right?
which was not a Broccoli production. That was a Warner Brothers. The guy, I guess, owned the rights, claimed that he had, when he did Thunderball, that he co-wrote it, and then he wanted to get that remade so many years. And then Connery just did it on spite because he couldn't stand Albert Broccoli. So he did it just to get back at him because they didn't get along. That's why he got replaced.
Revenge movie. Revenge role.
So he even did that. Like there was even a Bond film. He slipped that one in there. And of course, in his dad and Last Crusade, so. Yeah,
but that would all come after, right? That renaissance would happen after this. So I think for, again, now that this film is so much beloved, it's like it's in the Sean Connery canon of films. But at the time, it was kind of like, oh yeah, Sean Connery. He's kind of in everything now.
He definitely falls into a renaissance, period too of doing the characters at different times, period pieces. Like almost everything he was doing at that point was a period piece.
Yeah, he did Robin and Marion. He was all over the map.
All over the place doing.
He was working. He was working. He was a working actor.
He made that mortgage. He was a working actor, definitely doing it, and taking the roles. But he had the presence.
It bought him
his weight was growing. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
But always a pleasure to see, though, no matter what. He was so glad to see him.
He brought the weight. He brought the comfort. Yeah, he brought the comfort.
And he did, and then he got that regular gig on SNL, like whenever they did the Jeopardy skit, like he was always on that too. So he was always,
amazing. He was amazing on that,
wasn't he?
Yeah, the fact that he would come whenever they wanted him to, like he would just come and kind of get it for the goof, like he didn't take it seriously.
He put on the weight so quick, he was just,
and then he dropped it
off.
Yeah,
he just took it right off.
Drop back. But let's I gotta refocus before we really go off the rails. So. If you've never seen this movie, it's not a time travel film per se. It takes place over centuries.
Right.
And basically, in a nutshell, certain people have this predilection to be immortal. You don't find out if it's you until you're what they call your first death. So when you're mortally wounded is when you find out that you're one of these special types of people, and you know this because you get healed. As long as your head doesn't get cut off, you're all right. You can pretty much survive anything. Although it does, if you don't think too hard about it. But as long as you don't get your head cut off, you're okay. You're going to live forever. You'll heal. You get stabbed. You get shot. You can do all this stuff. And so there's this group of immortals that are throughout time and throughout the world, right? They're all, depending on when you're born and when your first death occurs, is when it reveals itself. So you've got people throughout history that are all becoming immortal or being revealed as that, only to battle it out until there's only one. And like I said in the open, there can be only one. And what does that mean? Well, they talk about this thing vaguely called the prize. We're fighting for the prize. Whoever's the last to live gets the prize. And we really are never told until the very, very end what that is. So it's almost like it's not really that important, which is a great thing. There's not really a quest for the prize because no one really knows what it is. It's more the journey of the story that it takes you on as less and less immortals are left, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was more the journey, not the destination. What do you think, Roland?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think it's showing those individuals who are the immortals, showing what the value of life is, and if they ever can get full. And like most of the other characters that play into, there's only like 2 or 3. Are they done living? They've been killing for so long, and they're just done living by the end of it, and by the part of the gathering. And everybody is, except for the character, I think, of was it Clancy?
Yeah,
right?
Kurgan, Clancy Brown.
Yeah, Kurgan. Yeah.
Yep.
That character is the only one that just wants to keep killing.
Yeah, he lives for it.
Yeah, he lives for it, and it's kind of an interesting play of humanity and how much is enough. So I actually found that really interesting, and again, that's one of the compelling things about the storytelling. It's that little insight into humanity at a point, even though I don't want to get philosophical about it. But it was really interesting to me when I was watching it again and started trying to understand where they go with this. And like you said, what is the prize besides a very public erection? Yeah, they get all the electricity.
And each time an immortal kills another immortal.
Yeah, they get electricity, and
they're never specific about it, but the inference is they kind of absorb, some of their
power,
ability,
the memories, abilities,
their power,
strength.
Whatever it is, they kind of, they're kind of absorbing that, and then, for lack of a better term, they're kind of powering up,
Yeah,
and Nick, this is what I found interesting is that the Kurgan came after Macleod before before he was mortally wounded. So Kurgan was maybe even able to tell who was immortal before they even knew, because he was already. And it seems like he maybe even had a feeling that Macleod was what might have been the second strongest to him, because he was always after Macleod specifically. He went after him before he became immortal. He wanted to take him off the board as it was early, and then basically was always offing other people, but his focus was always like trying to get to Macleod. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, which makes me think, how many other people had he killed up till that point? Because maybe he's absorbed all that, knowledge, and what other second sense he might have had. Because he definitely was hunting him down before even Macleod knew he was immortal, right? So it was like, what's going on?
My play on that was that he won the gathering the first time, and this is not his first round.
Maybe something.
Because the person who wins the gathering, he's the one who lives to the next round.
Right. There you go.
That was my
fan theory number one already out.
That was my theory.
But there's something about, like, as evil as he was, because you saw that car ride scene, right? Where he's just, I don't care. I'm going to run down people. I'm going to go through red lights.
Wait, the first one when he sardine canned the car with the granny in it, or the second one? Like
the second one when he's got
the granny's like, Daddy, Daddy. He's like hanging on the front, and then
that's been his life. I mean, that's why he just doesn't care. He rapes people. He kills people.
He's like a nihilist.
And that's the fear that if he's the last one and he gets the prize, what would he do with whatever that prize is? And you see Ramirez, he's like, he doesn't kill Macleod when he sees him the first time. He's training him to be better. So it's like,
I think he knows.
And he said, what would you do if we're the last two, right? And so it's like, I think he trusted that, it's going to be that guy, it's going to be the Kurgan that's going to be like one of the final two, and you don't want him to win,
Eric, it's interesting because Ramirez was, when giving the history of Kurgan, he said, he's been around for a couple thousand years before, on the steppes of Russia, and that Ramirez was also about 2,000 years old. So maybe those guys have been around so long that they've got this like Nick said, this other sense, because Ramirez also sought out Macleod. Right. So you've got Ramirez looking for him, because he's like, what do you want? He's like, you. And Kurgan is seeking him out too, to off him. So there is this kind of like, you're the one, like this kind of Neo Matrix thing going on, where Macleod is the one, and it's either, can we kill him first, or can someone that's good get to him? I think Ramirez understood he was probably never going to make it, that this guy was the hope, at least if he can get him to be on the side of good, humanity has a chance. What do you think of that?
For sure. Absolutely. It's a second sight. I think, because like we were saying, they've gained so much wisdom through the ages. Who knows? There's probably, witches and, all kinds of like people dabbling in, other things, black arts or whatever. They probably had accumulated some of that as well. And foresight into the future. Macleod being the chosen one. There's always that term being bandied about, like the chosen. What does that mean? But
he's Jewish.
In this case, he is. I mean, they knew. They knew. I mean, I think they most definitely knew. And and when it comes to Ramirez's death, I mean, he was prepared for it, and that always begs the question: like, where was Macleod during all of that? I always wondered, like, where did he go? Did Ramirez send him off?
I think he did. I think he kind of tried to spirit him away.
Yeah,
I think he had a feeling that Kurgan was coming, and he knew. Like you said, they've been around so long that they've got those heightened senses. So I think they could sense what. I think Ramirez was able to sense what was happening or what was going to happen. Say, I need to get this, because right before that was prefaced with the conversation about you need to leave her, you need to leave Heather, his wife, who was madly in love with after he was ostracized from his village. So I think there was that sense that Kurgan was closing in.
Laying the trap for him. Definitely. I think Ramirez was a, hey, come to this abode, this broken down castle, but it was a trap.
Well, it wasn't broken down before they started.
Yes.
Roland, that castle was in decent shape until Kurgan broke down the giant wooden oak door.
Yeah.
Every time he hits a wall, you see how powered up he is.
Yeah.
He's like hitting the wall with like misses of the sword. and
No,
it's
he's
knocking
knocking
it
down whole
down.
walls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very,
so and that's
yeah.
was just a great fight because Connery got like the one neck shot in.
Yep.
And almost got
Yeah,
it.
and he's
right?
like-
I mean, it was that shows how great Ramirez was. Where
Yeah,
he was
came
almost able to
Yeah,
take him
real
out.
close. Yeah.
You know,
And he goes,
Yeah.
"I see my cut has improved your voice." So it's
Yeah.
like
There was a
So
lot of
there's
that
those
banter.
moments of
Yeah,
there's
those
those-
moments of
those-
banter. Yeah.
those little throw-ins that you
And
really
that-
it's kind
And
of
then
that's-
later on, Macleod's in the church. He's like,
Yeah.
Ramirez's cut didn't go deep enough.
Yeah.
He's referencing that scar on his neck with
Yeah.
the safety
That's
pin.
my thing with Lambert, with Macleod, that if he was better with the language, some of those lines would have landed a little better for
Yeah.
me. It's just the timing I needed
Yeah.
a little better from him. I mean, I visually, again, I think it's a classic in a lot of ways. I came from that comic book era where a lot of the mags were coming. Like Conan, I loved Conan. I was a Conan the Barbarian comic book.
Oh
reader.
yeah.
So I had a whole collection in my house. I loved it, and this was very much in that style of storytelling.
it feels
I
like it
know
was a
it's not
graphic
time
novel.
That
It feels like it was a graphic novel,
That's
but,
exactly
but it's not.
It's not.
It could, with the time, with just the different eras and everything. It really,
Everything,
and
the
way they handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way they
handle.
handle the jumps.
Yeah.
Like Eric said in the beginning, it's part of it is the transitions, which are brilliant. They really, there's a close up of McLeod's face, and then it fades into a mural of the Mona Lisa in New York City.
Yeah.
Just the way they don't shock you into it. They kind of just bring you in, or when he got arrested and then the siren lights are flashing and it pans over and then you're in Scotland.
And you see the
really
sunset.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
It's like an overlap.
touch.
It's like an overlap.
It's not
Yeah.
ham-fisted, and that's
Yeah,
what you have to
definitely.
appreciate. That's what I'm going to use one of Eric's terms. That's what's so sublime about this film is that it is easy to kind of really throw it away as a sci-fi fantasy thing because it's immortals and swords.
Yeah.
If you watch the film from a filmmaker standpoint, Russell Mulcahy really did a bang-up job. I mean, it's style and it's substance. It's got both, and usually we talk about some films that are all sizzle and no steak.
right?
This has got both. He's got both there.
And I think his music video directing helped him out a lot because I think that's where he developed the sense of like, I could do really creative things with the camera. I don't have to keep it so static. And,
Imagine what I could do with a budget. He probably said,
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
he had a
you cut your
budget,
teeth doing these short things, right?
Yeah.
Since
So
we're talking about music videos, I mean, I was in it to win it. As soon as Queen, they did Flash Gordon, which was kind of like a lesser, this was like full on Queen.
great.
Like,
Yeah.
their music is integral to this film.
They were only hired to do the
for
open. They only hired to open to do the open when they saw the clip. Again, I'm a trivia geek. So, but once they saw the clips of it or the dailies, they were inspired by the shots and the scenes to write the whole soundtrack.
Yeah, and it opens with Princes of the Universe, which is just like as soon as it starts, and they use that score throughout too. They use the Queen even in the older stuff, in the Scotland stuff. And then, of course, one of the most poignant scenes is when Connor's wife Heather dies, right? And she's she's aged out, and she's like,
She's like
I
35
never
there.
wondered
They
why you
would've died.
stayed. Yeah, it's like, why did you stay? But then you hear the song "Who Wants to Live Forever," which is with Freddie's performance. Oh,
Yeah.
It
And
was
it's
Cried then
inspired
and
by
I
that
cried
scene.
again watching it. This movie is such heart to it.
Yeah.
And we can't discount Michael Kamen's contribution. His score. I mean, Queen wrote the songs, but but Michael Kamen came in and wrote score music, which I think is one of his best scores ever. I think it's one of the great scores, underrated. Nobody really talks about it as much. He did some great stuff. I think he did. I think he's better than. I think James Horner. I might be going a little on limits saying that, but everything that he's done with the Lethal Weapon films, the Die Hard movies, the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, I thought was a beautiful score.
I agree. Yeah,
it's just such great, and again that emotion and in those scenes, and when he's playing some of the themes that Queen wrote, like the music from the songs. Again, it builds that. It has that. It elevates it to another level entirely. So
it's definitely easy to throw it away. This film, but like all these elements that we're speaking about, from Eric, you talking about the themes and the music, and Dean, you getting excited in the storytelling and the style. It's easy to throw it away, like you said, but when you break it down, there's like a lot of interesting parts that are intentional, not an accident. It's an auteur film. I would even call it. From that director, he had a vision, He took these skill sets that he had and he applied it. He went big budget for a camera. He wanted these beautiful shots. And once you establish those rules, you can have beautiful shots. One of my critiques, besides the accent, is probably sound design. It's just sound design. I know we have a tipping point, and the sound design is just not where it should be. It probably would never happen in the movie today. But it's okay because and the guy doing somersaults to get it way really slow. But that was like
the director's cut.
Well, that was a little bit long in the original cut. It wasn't that long. It seemed like he was doing calisthenics.
Really?
Yeah, it was one or two. I think he flipped out.
He barely got like 8 feet. And he was doing somersaults.
It was are you talking about Facile in the beginning?
Yeah. He was the fight choreographer for the film, by the way.
Oh, really?
Okay. I could see
that's
that.
The fight. Yeah, that's the fight choreographer.
Well, he figured, you know what? This is my shot. Let me
do it. Yeah.
Put me on a wire and flip me over.
Let me get a quickening. Yeah. But but the sound design is like probably the only thing that might pull you out, and that brings the level of for somebody who's not looking at it, for hey, give it a shot. Yeah. If you're like, I'm going to find something to bother me, is a sound design. But once you get past that, and that's the rule of it,
I can agree with that. Yeah,
I can accept that.
There are parts of the movie that do scream low budget. I mean, there's no mistaking about that.
It felt like an independent film too, but I think even that was like almost like a choice. Like I could totally see him saying, I want to make a graphic novel, low budget film. That's the style I want. These are the shots I want. You can tell some of the cut-in shots are low grade, or maybe because I saw the director's cut, there were added scenes that were found, and they weren't of the higher caliber.
Some were a little fuzzy. You can
tell they were inserted later.
So that you can tell, but otherwise, it is a low budget film. It's I'm going to butcher his name. Jarmusch, is that his name?
Jim Jarmusch?
It's sort of like his style too. I can see some influences from that kind of filmmaking in this, where it's the tempo, it's really just story, it's the clothes we find off the rack. He's gonna wear one suit because I got a budget for one suit. And that's why he's wearing it.
Give him a pair of Adidas blue jeans and a trench coat.
That's
what I wore in the 80s, man. Blue jeans,
that's it.
Leather jacket, bomber jacket.
The bad New York accents. I wish I could have my 80s bomber jacket.
And that's it.
That was it. That was it.
But you know what? I think that's
medium.
I think that's what endears us to this film too. Yeah. It's kind of like you're kind of rooting for it, because of its low budget pedigree, where it could be easily dismissed as much and be like, yeah, it's kind of all right, Highlander, it's kind of campy, but I think when you kind of wipe away some of the campiness, because there is a lot. Even Clancy Brown's character has got some, as much as he's menacing, he's got humor. Like he's also doesn't really take himself too seriously. He playing chicken and tormenting the nuns and quoting Neil Young in the church. At the time, I didn't know what that quote was. It sounded when he's like, "It's better to burn out than fade away." I didn't know what that. I know I heard that somewhere, but I didn't know where it was from. Then I'm like, "Oh my god, that's like Neil Young." It's like So there's those elements of it where it's kind of it's contemporary. Also, it's not trying to be highfalutin and hoity-toity.
Right.
Although it does carry some of that pedigree when the even the scene on the boat when he's learning how to balance and Connery singing, it's got some lighthearted moments to it as well. Yeah. Even though the fate of the world is
it's definitely grounded. It's small. I mean, I think I speak to people about this all the time. There's certain movies that are world saving and certain movies are like saving that block. And it's sort of like this is a world in theme. It's world saving, but it's really saving that block. It's a very small world. They've established the rules. You have some very bad New York accents, which irritate me. But that's the film different. It's definitely a film of its time. Some of that dialogue could never get done today.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But that's okay because you get a snippet of a story that is unique, that maybe cannot be repeatable, but that's okay. That's what makes it great.
You've got John Polito in there too. A very young John Polito, still had no hair when he was young.
Right.
As the side detective eating the Doritos.
Yeah.
Our little
you look very pretty, Brenda.
Yeah,
a
little
he's
creepy.
Kind of creepy.
A little creepy.
And then he's the one following her. So it's like that that's kind of subplot of
It was pre-Brad Pitt, always eating in the scene. I'm like, oh my god, that's where Brad Pitt got it.
And speaking of that, there's the great scene when Connor or now he's known as Russell Nash,
Nash.
In New York, goes to meet Brenda goes to her house for dinner, right?
Yeah.
And he brings her some brandy from like the 1700s, which is really cool. Like, you know, they show that one shot of his like sunken living room, like his treasure room, and like
his
all the stuff that he's collected. Like imagine like throughout history, he's just been like collecting just things like
those are his memories.
Shield and a spear.
As if that loft apartment that he had wasn't enough, right?
Yeah, with
and
an
he goes into
elevator.
this antechamber that's like that has all these treasures, which are probably worth a fortune.
Right.
You know, like he's sitting on a gold, you know, like a literal gold mine there. But it's so cool. He's like sniffing the brandy. I love that kind of stuff. It's a bit dramatic. Yeah. But I kind of like that melodrama to it. They add that to it, you know.
It does. It adds that kind of timelessness.
Because that's the way they acted. That's the way they behaved in the day. Yeah. Like he still has that. He still brings that out. You know, he still thinks back to those, you know, those eras.
He does the scumbag move though, and he gives her the book.
Yeah.
Right. Like, she's like, oh, is that like, what's that? And he goes, open it if you know. She's like, can I open it? He's like, if you like.
Yeah.
So then she opens it and it's her book. Like he totally outed her that she wasn't working in antiquities or whatever. And then, then he reveals, she's like, oh, you know, he's like, oh, the cop is out there. And the great line is like, what are you going to do next? Turn off the tape or shoot me with the 45? Because he totally was, made when he walked in, he totally made the room. He knew the gun was in the drawer and then he, you know, nice view, you know, when he was talking into the tape recorder. So again, just really great writing, really great scenes that don't really propel the story forward. It's just more character building and kind of you see that
a lot of the character.
Yeah, that he's got those, you know, he's been around for so long that he's probably seen it all, and he's not going to be, nothing's going to surprise him.
His private collection are the things that don't die in his life. So you totally get it. The things that matter.
Good point.
And I think there's a Ramirez in that room. I think I read again trivia because I'm not like that.
Yeah, you see his hat and his cloak in the background.
Right?
Yeah, in the
background.
So
those are things that are important to him. So he can't keep, you know, a spouse, but he can keep those memories. So like you're saying, this is character building. This is you're learning, and it doesn't have to be like thrown at people like a hammer. But if it's there and it's true, it reads true when the story's told. People feel that.
Detail.
It's purely, the detail.
You're picking it up in the back of your head.
And he doesn't walk in and say, "This is my these are my antiques.
This is
I've
not
collected through time."
But
you're
reading
dependent on the
all
written
must
word.
Be special things for him. Right.
Yeah, it's show don't tell. Right. It's him not walking in and say, "This is every," you know, or he doesn't mention it to somebody. Yeah.
Right. That's good storytelling. That's what elevates it past the campy independent film that you can dismiss. You know, that was just made for, you know, a Corman film. You know, this is something different.
And it's interesting because the extended cut, there's a character, you know, that is kind of like Connor Macleod's. She's like the secretary, kind of like a side character. Yeah. And in the original cut, she's just kind of there. Her name is Rachel, and he's always kind of like, Rachel, you knew this would happen. Like that's where it gets a little clunky, but in the director's cut, they actually show that he was in Germany in like during World War II and saved her from the Nazis and brought her. Yeah, and
and gave her an English accent, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, taught it. Well, she or maybe they could have been in English.
That's how I read it. Like it was England, and there was like
or they could have been something, somewhere. But he brings her home. But he brings her and as a father figure and has a daughter.
Yeah,
but then. In current times, she's aging out also. But it's still that father-daughter like it didn't turn into like a creepy romantic thing. He's still like, you know, because
sweet Rachel.
Sweet Rachel. You know, and it's a kind of magic type of thing where So, it's really an interesting how they handled that too. They could have really went kind of sleazy and made, you know, like
it was if
they had cut that part out, they could have made it that. But
it was an emotional attachment, not a physical attachment.
Yeah, it makes those scenes. It brings out the emotion in those scenes where he's saying goodbye to her.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because you never really knew what the relationship was, like Dean was saying. But yeah, you think back and it's like, and he repeats the line and he goes, "Hey, it's a kind of magic," you know, and that's, you know, because it makes more sense. In the original cut, when he's leaving her, he says it's a kind of magic. You think, oh, okay, they threw that in because it's the name of the song.
Right.
But in the restored, in the expanded edition, after he gets shot by the Nazi, he's laying on her and she's like, "Why didn't you die?" And he's like, "It's a kind of magic." So that, when it's in the restored version, it ties it back and it makes so much more sense. And that's why I really, like the extended edition, it's longer, but it really, I'm going to advocate, it really does turn this movie into an epic film because of the scope, because you're adding more scope to it.
I think
and then the songs were written after they saw the scene. So that means that title is actually what inspired the song.
Yeah, but you're thinking when you're watching the movie, it's like, oh, he's, let's put in there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how
product
placement. How it's being moved along is really interesting. Where you're deconstructing, essentially the vision, but it's interesting how it moves along in that way. Again, the characters have depth. You don't see that a lot in films from that period. You can see they have a history. Again, not usually seen a lot. A cab driver is a cab driver. You sort of get even the hotel manager, which again, bad New York accent, not a tough guy, will get slapped any day of the week. I don't know why you're surprised he's going to get slapped.
He's got the sore on his lip.
He's got the herpes cold sore, like 3 inches wide.
They're all British actors. That's why. I think that's the thing. We're Australian actors.
I hope you get your head chopped off, asshole.
But
don't ever speak to me again.
Ever speak to me again.
But even that character had an arc, sort of in that thing. He's a creepy monkey grubber. So you had a history. You actually knew his whole thing. You knew his element. You knew that where that guy's thinking.
And then
you knew that guy.
And then the old black gentleman
laughing
there, like he was like, "I didn't do nothing, man." And he's like, "Shut up," those
are just characters that populate the universe.
That's right. That's great.
The detective that's on his case, that's going after him, and he's got it in for him. When he went to go see the guy that got really run through by Kurgan, he showed him the picture of Connor Macleod. He said, "This is the guy," and he's like, "No."
Right.
He's like, no, it was dark. It had to be him. He's like, no, it wasn't him. And then he's like, damn it. He was like mad.
The freak was trying to kill me. I find it interesting though that after a while, it's Brenda that actually takes up the procedural though. She's the one that sort of takes over the investigation, which I liked. Which was interesting when she goes to see the guy. And he figures out this guy's been creeping around since whenever, and he puts the names together and all that. And it's actually she's the one that sort of takes over the case, and then you don't really see the cops anymore after that, right? They're just
because she wants the sword. That's all she cares about. She doesn't care about solving. She doesn't care about the murders. She wants to, right? Because she made it play. Like I want to find out about that sword. For her, it's more like an Indiana Jones type thing, like finding this archaeological
true
gem.
That.
Would like kind of make her career or whatever. So she was kind of, then she stumbles upon this guy that just happened, she followed him and then was there for the sword fight when he's fighting with the pipe and everything. And she got dragged into it, which is,
well, she does get dragged. And then like I think I pointed out in our tropes episode, there's the scene where, she just hops into bed with him, and she finds out that he's immortal. And then the next scene you see them, they're in the sack. They were getting it on like that.
That was very French. That was a very French scene. That was
very shadowy and
right?
tastefully done. They didn't go for the they didn't go for like the sexploitation angle of it. They kept it kind of
And again, but the scene right after that was another added scene where they're at the zoo when he tells her we can't be together. I can't do this. And she's just like, okay, well, have a good life or whatever. Like
Kurgan's right behind him.
And then Kurgan's in the background, which was the important part. Yeah. Because then it cuts to it, right, Nick?
And that's in the director's cut too. So those two scenes I think really add to it because they weren't in the original. And they add to the storytelling. The only thing with the director's cut I didn't like was in the beginning, when they're at Madison Square Garden, they kind of cut away and show the flashbacks. And I really, in the original, I like when you don't see that until after the fight underneath, and then they pan up and suddenly, you're in Scotland in the Highlands.
It's an interesting decision. Great. Like I agree with you because when I watched the direct, I'm like, wait, this isn't supposed to be happening so early.
Yeah.
What I think what the contrast was there though was the violence of the wrestling versus him having flashbacks of him being in battle. So I kind of understand it, but I'm used to the
over the head with it.
It changes the dynamic.
I'm used to the original way where it's all just that whole scene of wrestling and him leaving and him having a fight because you don't know what the hell this means in this context. There's no flashback yet, so you're like, okay, he left
What's going on?
wrestling and
Yeah.
now he's having a sword fight in the parking
Yeah.
garage.
And then the
Yeah.
flashback, and
Yeah.
then you start getting. And I'm a kind of guy where I hate voiceovers. I hate flashbacks. I think that can be lazy storytelling. In this movie, it totally works. Maybe it's the transitions, how perfect they were,
Yeah.
but it really added to the world building and storytelling, because you see the scar on Kurgan's neck before you find out what happened to things like that.
Yeah.
I just think really well done.
But
Instead
also
of
it's
if
a
it
different
was linear,
story.
it
And
would
that's
be
actually what's
different.
good
Yeah.
about it. That's what's
Yeah, I
good
don't
about
think
the
it's a
flashback here. It's a different
flashback.
story.
Exactly. It's like an
So
alternate
it's
story that
it's not
they're telling,
repeating
like
what
parallel.
most people do.
It's his story too, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Yeah,
it's
right.
a parallel
yeah.
story.
Yeah.
It's
It
less a
needs to be
flashback.
told. Yeah,
Yeah,
it needs
most
to be told.
flashbacks are just repeats. They were just repeat. Like, hey, I got hurt before, now I'm hurt again. This is
Yeah.
a totally different environment. This is an origin story, a love story. A lot of those elements in that flashback. So they're little like micro scenes of a character. And they're stories unto themselves. Every bit could have been a story with a beginning, middle, and end.
And then when it flashes forward, you have more of that background about him.
Exactly.
About him losing his wife and losing Ramirez, and it adds to a little bit of the world weariness of the character, but he still remains positive throughout all that, because he kind of, like you said, Roland, Kurgan is just kind of like barreling through life. He's just a hedonist. He's just gonna screw whoever, kill whoever, drink whatever, destroy whatever. He doesn't like whatever. That's his thing. But Connor on the other hand has kind of had more of a lived life where he's had different. He partied with Castigear. It's like, oh, remember that party 100? So he kind of fell into the life of just the different experiences. And then he had the duel with the guy, and he kept getting killed over and over because he called it a fat warthog. So there's you see the parallels of the different lives that these immortals lead too. One guy's just thirsty and hungry for violence and killing so he can get to the end. Yeah. And meanwhile, I don't think Connor was searching these things out. I think he was just kind of living his life. And as these people appeared, he would, like Fazil, he just kind of like, he felt he was there, and he went down to, and he's like, because he was like, Fazil, wait. And we don't know if he was going to try and talk to him. Yeah. Or we don't know what is going to be like. What were they kind of allies? We don't know, because Fazil didn't seem like a really terrible guy. He just pulled the trigger on the sword pretty quick. Maybe like, I got to get him before he gets me type thing.
Right. I think
they were the case because. I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say they were there for the gathering, right? That was what was drawing them all to New York. Yeah. So they killed somebody in New Jersey. Then this was at Madison Square Garden. Then they were like, now's the time. It's like we're approaching the end. It's you or me. So
and that's the heartbreaking part of it. Is it's clear that Macleod established these relationships. They were like allies. Or, through the ages, like I'm sure there were probably more than that in what we've seen. I think actually the novelization, the tie-in novel apparently had a lot more scenes that whoever wrote the book, put in there as well. Like, especially with Castigear and there's more to that. And there's more with Kurgan, like way back in the day before Macleod. And, but like you say, Kurgan going just ready to kill everybody in his wake, but he's establishing these relationships. I think it's, in a sense, it's almost very difficult for Macleod to have to do this and had to even get to this point. Yeah, that he has to kill I have to kill this guy. I have to kill Castigear if needs if it comes to that.
Just one more Star Wars reference while you're mentioning Castigear. That actor Hugh Quarshie played Captain Panaka in Phantom Menace.
Okay.
So there's a lot of overlay with Star Wars and people related to this whole production, either before or after. But that's the final Star Wars reference. Okay. That's it. We'll leave it alone. Hugh Quarshie as Castigear and his bottle of Boom Boom. He was ready to party. He's ready to live it up, and then he's kind of fighting Kurgan in the alley with with his kind of.
He's got that scimitar, like that Arabian,
the scimitar sword, cool. You can't fight the brutality of Kurgan. I mean, he's got that convertible he's got the sword that he assembles. Yeah. But just think of how he wields that a lot of times with just one hand. So he's got to be just really, even though you think that's a heavy sword, he's like wielding it with one hand. So that just shows you the power of Kurgan, of just like, he's just like the destroyer I don't think
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
really has a chance against him.
He's into the fighting. He's into the pain. I mean, he had baby pins on his neck
Yeah.
when he wanted to disguise himself.
In disguise.
He's in disguise. So he's into that violence. I mean, even the reference with the prostitute Candy that comes in, and again they do that.
Got a little rough.
They I heard you're a kinky. He's like, I'm sure you are. You know, his life of what he finds pleasurable is on the hedonistic, painful side. You know, and that's what it is. But it's told well throughout the whole film that's what he is. There's no question that's what he is. Yeah. You know what to expect. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be brutal, and it's going to be only self-gratifying. Like,
full disclosure.
Rape is on his list. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it depends who's there, right?
Unfortunately,
whereas he has Macleod, who, like we said, like you were saying, I think it's an obvious thing. It's that he is living life for as long as he can. He's come to terms he'll never die. So he's having all these experiences, memories, which are, the elements in his private collection, being, somebody who works with antiquities. Again, these are, perpetuating things that have value, that may have value for other people. He's thinking even past his life. So it's really great how they show it without really telling too much. Yeah. And they're they live in their lanes, and now they're going to cross lanes, but that's
it's all coming to a head.
Yeah.
But before we get to that finale, I need to fully disclose that when this film came out, I used to literally have nightmares about Kurgan. I literally had nightmares about that character. Like, it had such an impact. I don't know if we saw it once or twice in the theater, but I swear to God, I used to have some recurring nightmares with that character. It was so like menacing and so like just really just creepy, and the black matted hair and Clancy Brown's voice. I mean, you got to give it to him. It needed to be over the top, but it wasn't necessarily scene chewing. It kind of skirts the line of, if the character was drawn a little different way, it could be seen as over the top. But we know that the character is kind of broadly drawn and big, so he can kind of get away with some of that dialogue that he can really kind of spin into like singing Neil Young. Like, that was out of place, but for that character, it seems like, he's not out of touch. Even though he does what he does, he's not out of touch. He's just living like Roland said. He's in a different lane, but he's still of the current world. Time that he's in. Yeah. And you got to give credit to Clancy Brown. Yeah.
The design. I mean, besides the trench coat, but you look at his. He's definitely into the punk movement, which was moving then. Like with his attire, so
the chain mail,
all this stuff. So he's pulling everything he loves that's dark and has this sort of weight, has a dark presence.
Yeah, he represents the current version of what he would have been as
exactly. So he's pulling
with that jawbone helmet. And
even that was almost like black and white. You would think like they would like they went post and pulled all the color out of that because he was the only element that had no color.
Yeah, he was pale. His face was
pale. He had that gray bone helmet. And everybody else is in, Scottish plaids, and they're like in their kilt colors, and this guy's got this, this. I mean, he's just black and white.
And when Connor sees him for the first time, it's that reaction. I mean, it's like a Franzetti painting, It's like it's incredible.
Yeah,
so he called him the Black Knight. He goes, the first time I felt this was when I saw the Black Knight.
Right.
And that was
right. So again,
that was
this eeriness, and even throughout, even when he comes back, he's still pretty much monochrome. I mean, the guys that gotten all the color pulled out of him.
Yeah, he hasn't changed. No, and they didn't have trench coats in Scotland, but I guess maybe that's the modern kilt.
I did.
That might be the mod. Like, they may have kind of paralleled it. Like,
he really wasn't wearing pants. Come on, that's just that shot. They didn't. He was just.
He wore jeans and sneakers on.
Jeans for
at the minimum.
But he chafed. He chafed with that. So let's just.
I think it's probably a nod to. Probably sort of a noirish type of nod.
That's what I think.
The streets of New York.
I definitely think that.
You get to the juxtaposition between Scotland and then New York, and making New York just as primitive looking as Scotland was back in the day, when he went the
urban jungle
times. Yeah, exactly. So
you got the deep streets, the cityscape, which is like mountains. So you have all that element.
And New York at that time was really like that. That was not
it
like
was.
It was a shithole.
They weren't trying to recreate it like they did in Joker. Like, they weren't trying to recreate it. It was like that. So they had the actual.
Yeah,
and they had the actual sets
that was right.
Cars,
exactly.
Cars. I was just sitting there watching the cars.
Absolutely like that. And then you've got this great climax at Studios.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how I mean, obviously they didn't destroy that sign because is
Right.
it still there? Silver Cup?
Still there. Still there.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I'm
hidden
glad
by
to know
all
it's
the
intact.
buildings in Long Island City.
That's
It
where
was-
some of the
Roosevelt, Long
budget
Island
went.
City or Roosevelt
Long Island
Island?
City. Yeah,
Long
you got
Island
to cross. You could drive over the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, and
it's still
there's
there.
there's a great Queen song there. Queen does a cover of New York, New York, which you
Yeah.
can't find anywhere. I
I know.
can't even
Yeah,
find
no.
a bootleg. It's never been released as a hidden track anywhere.
Really?
Like I would, yeah, and all you hear is like the final refrain, and you hear Freddie Mercury ripping into New York, New York as Kurgan is crossing whatever bridge it is to go to Silver Cup,
Queensboro,
and the
probably.
helicopter shot
59th
pulls
Street,
out,
yeah.
and you see this car rolling down, and you hear just Freddie just singing like New York, New
Yeah.
York, which is really
Yeah.
great. But unfortunately,
it's got great elements.
For
It's
sure.
got great elements.
such
Definitely.
a great thing.
I walked into here thinking I'll critique the hell out of this movie, but then I like it by the
Did
end.
we change?
So thank you.
Did we change your
Did we
mind?
change your mind?
No, I probably had it in me. I just want to be a bitter old man.
Yeah,
but
we
I'm
had to get to that soft interior. Roland was coming in hard. We had to just scrape it away a little bit. We knew he was in there. We knew the soft teddy bear was in
I
there.
pop for ice cream for everybody. That's it.
Speaking of ice cream pop, Kurgan was eating an ice cream pop when he
Yeah.
chased after Brenda. He's like standing there. She's like walking
Yeah.
up the stairs. He's eating
Yeah.
like a strawberry fudgesicle or something.
Yeah, that's
like so
actually funny.
casual. Like he knows
Very
he's
New
gonna,
York.
yeah,
He
like
got that-
she,
well, he got
she-
it from the zoo, right? Did he?
Yeah.
Didn't he steal
Is
it
that
from
where
the
he
zoo?
got
Probably
that
probably
from?
killed the vendor.
Toy vendor
Probably killed
We
the
didn't
kid.
see-
made a kid cry and just took it.
You know, she locks her door, not realizing
Yeah.
that he broke down the door of a castle 600
Yeah.
years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
That little door ain't gonna hold him.
No.
Like that's not gonna stop him. He's breaking down oak. Earlier, like a couple of hundred years, and I'm sure the workmanship was better in
Yeah.
Scotland
Yeah.
in the 1500s. So just all those little great
Right.
that he's like finishing the ice creams, like those little bits that you get.
Playful.
It just
man-child.
adds to the
Yeah.
character. It's just like
Yeah.
it just gives him another level. Like he's eating an ice
Yeah.
cream pop. He's like a he's a murdering,
Like-
raping,
like you said,
pillaging
he-
guy.
He's
You know.
not a guy who's hung up on the past. He'll embrace the future as long as it gives him pleasure, which is
Yeah.
ice cream.
Which is
You know,
ice cream pop.
So it's to your point. It's like he's like I'm not forgetting the future.
Yeah.
I'm
He's-
actually enjoying it. It's decadent. It's ice cream and killing.
Yeah.
And he's very,
Yeah.
Obviously very confident. He's overconfident
Yeah.
that he's going to kill Macleod, and and even though he knows that this is what's whatever, but I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to get the prize, and whatever it is. But
Well, even Ramirez though, he said Kurgan is the strongest of them all. So he was already known or sensed, by his brutality or skill or just sheer force. He almost seems just like a force. Like he just it doesn't stop pounding on you until you relent, until you get tired. Like he's like literally like a shark, like a killing machine. Like he won't stop thrashing at you until you make an error or a mistake. But I'm sorry, there is one more Star Wars callback. I'm sorry. I just remembered it. I'm sorry. At the very end, when they fall in through the glass and they're in that big like empty warehouse, right? There's the scene when they're about to square off and Christopher Lambert holds his sword over his head and his arm out, just like Obi-Wan does with his lightsaber in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
That's the same move that Obi-Wan does when he was ready to fight like General Grievous or whoever.
I noticed
except
that,
for
when I
Obi-Wan
watched
does
it.
the two-finger thing, right? You know what I'm talking about? He holds the lightsaber over. Christopher Lambert did it first. I'm sorry. We got to give the points to Highlander for that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
I think they saw that and said that's a pretty cool move. So
definitely the callback. So it's in that world.
Yeah,
it's
as
in
a
the same
Star
universe.
Wars fan, I always sometimes look at movies that have sword play as like a key feature, and I wonder how that would have played if this was like an old school Star Wars lightsaber film. I thought of that with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, things like that. So I'm thinking like, what if this was like an Old Republic, the Sith just kind of hunting each other down until there's only two left, that kind of thing.
You know what?
Same type of
the
thing.
world, the universe are connected. There you go. Fan theory number 2. There you go.
It could be. There's a lot of crossover there. So you know what? Let's as we wind it down, let's kind of go. If there's some favorite scenes or favorite lines that really stuck with you, Nick, what do you got? Got something?
Oh man,
come back to you.
You always do this to me, and I should anticipate that you're going to ask this question.
Come on, how many times have you been a guest,
I'll
man?
be honest, it's the Ramirez scene in the castle. I love that scene. And what I really like is what they don't show. Like at the very end, you see, Kurgan, you know what he's going to do to poor, to Heather, but they don't show it. They cut away. And then at the end, when he kind of reveals, when he's like, oh, he wasn't Ramirez. She wasn't Ramirez's wife. She was like, he kind of, but they didn't show that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They didn't
so
need to.
Kinda, yeah. But that's
Yeah.
with like his character. Like he's just so evil, but like that's him through the ages, like dealing with this immortality. Some people will deal with it as heroic and be like, okay, I'm going to fight the Nazis. I'm going to do this, because I know I can't die. Others are like, I can't die, so I'm going to savor the pain. I'm going to kill other people. I'm going to rape and pillage because there's no repercussions for me. I will be the last one standing in the end. So I love that scene. And then when he gets his comeuppance, he's got that smile on his face, right? I love that too. That's a great death scene. So those are my favorites, I guess.
Cool. Roland?
I'll tell you, I like some of the camp and the fight scene in the castle with Ramirez. But it just reminded me of Errol Flynn and a lot of the stuff that I grew up on and watching those old black and whites. And they were going up the stairs and down the stairs. And I know it was heightened and it went over the top a little bit with the and this is probably, I think that's the same styrofoam much of Star Trek used. So there's a crossover there too. I think so.
With the moss growing on it.
Like just falling down and like 4-ton, styrofoam rocks with.
They tumbled lightly when they fell.
Yeah, they tumbled. They had a bit of a bounce, but and a wind, but it just brought back a lot of those elements and that being a swashbuckler and like I said, Errol Flynn stuff. I was like, was it Burt Lancaster? Was that also did those types of films? I forget. But another guy from that era was doing all those films. And I just liked that they paid sort of a homage to that.
Yeah.
They said, this is a period piece. We're going to talk about the period. And this is what people do. This is our swordplay. So it connected with that world. So
this director
I do want to point out, Roland, that
right?
I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
I think you were going to say it probably. This director did an Errol Flynn biopic. That was one of his last movies that he did. In like Flynn. Oh. I think he did.
Yeah, it's called In Like Flynn. It was called In Like Flynn. Yeah,
that was one of his last. So
2017 or 2018.
But I want to make I'd like to make a Star Wars reference if I can, and to your Roland. Yeah. Him going up the stairs. Ramirez had the high ground, but in this case, it didn't work, did it?
No.
Well, he didn't. Kurgan didn't jump and try and flip over him.
A half a tumble.
I hate you. So, Eric, you have what jumps out to you?
Two. I mean, of course, the action, of course, all the on location footage, all of that stuff. But I think probably the scene where Heather dies is just that song. It's so beautiful. And then of course there's another scene is when he's in Brenda's apartment and when he's got the brandy and he's sniffing the brandy and he goes into that little monologue about 1730, whatever, 83.
The Montgolfier brothers flew their first balloon.
Mozart wrote his great mass, and I love that. I just love how he just zones out for that moment, and then he gets right back into the scene, and
it shows he was there, like you believe,
exactly.
Like he was there.
Yeah. You really believe it, So I love that kind of stuff.
Look at the trivia. You know the trivia about that scene? Do you know the trivia? I read it. I have it in front of me. Jim Steinman actually did that to the director when they opened up a 1949 bottle of wine. And he said, we're breathing air from 1949.
Jim Steinman of Meatloaf fame.
Meatloaf. Again, dramatic. So we have a crossover
over the top.
There you go. Over the top. So again, it all connects. It all connects.
Cool. I've got two scenes. I'll go in reverse order. The scene in the church.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's the only scene where they actually meet each other. Like we don't know that they've actually met, except for the time, except for the battle, except for when Kurgan killed him the first time. We don't know that they've actually have met. We don't know if Kurgan's been hunting him, but they finally kind of come to it. And he's like, remember what Ramirez taught you. Like when they're in the church, and he's going to grab him. And so even though Kurgan's a brute, he still is bound by the rules of that have been set forth, through eternity. And you will always be weaker than I. So it's always like. Yeah. You get that one little face off, which was kind of neat, because otherwise they didn't really interact. It was almost like Wrath of Khan, which all three of us did, where the two antagonists or antagonists and protagonists don't meet at all. So this was kind of neat there. And then the other scene I like is a Connery scene, and it's one line, but he delivers it so well, and you could tell Connery was invested when he did it. Connor's like, how do we beat the Kurgan? And Connery's like, with heart, faith, and steel.
skill.
Like
Yeah.
he just like he's got like that glimmer in his eye. He's like, he's like kind of delivering that line, and it's exactly what it needed. Like that hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the strongest, but with heart, faith, and a little bit of steel, someone might be able to do it, and he kind of knew it wasn't going to be him, kind of put his hand on his heart when he did it. It's just a great scene to watch.
It's a Connery moment.
When he's being the mentor. Yeah. I really dug that.
He's got that smirk. Yeah. That
He's
smile
got
on his
and
face.
he's got that look in his eye, he's really selling it. So as we wind down, I think someone mentioned in the beginning, Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Oh.
So we, as Eric and I claimed Highlander for ourselves, we saw Highlander 2 in the theater and quickly disowned
it.
The biggest turd of a film and a sequel that probably should not have ever been made. We were so excited for another Highlander. It was like 91, I think it came out.
Yeah, I think so.
So Sean Connery was now a big get. Like he was like, oh, they got Sean Connery to come back.
Right.
Yeah.
We went to go see this thing.
Like, why? How?
Yeah. We walked in and we were like, what? I don't understand. I've never seen a film totally retcon the film before and fundamentally change everything about the previous film. It turns out they're not immortals. They're aliens from another planet. They got exiled. They can regenerate. Like everything that Highlander was absolutely undone for no apparent reason.
Terrible.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the movie, the TV show?
I don't remember. I don't. You know what? I completely blocked that film from my mind. I don't remember it at all. I'm surprised we didn't walk out.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't just get up and walk out, which I never do hardly. I mean, I don't think I've ever been a time where I actually got up and walked out of a theater, but that could have been the one film that we should have. I mean, we just the, just watching just the first 20 minutes of that movie, we were like, what the, like so perplexed
what's going
by it.
on?
And apparently, I guess the studio kept tampering with it, and there is a director's cut of that as well.
The Renegade edition.
The Renegade cut,
which I haven't seen.
Which is Russell Mulcahy's vision, but I can't imagine it being any much different than what was shown. So I don't know. I've never seen it.
And they did a third film, which again retconned it, kind of ignored the second movie.
Yeah.
So
and then another one after that, and then like Roland said, they went to a TV series. I think it was totally unnecessary.
I think
I did watch TV series,
and I think they wanted popular.
It was
a popular series, but
at that
he's a Macleod. How many Macleod immortals are there? Because then it was a cartoon. It's like
they wanted to bring Christopher Lambert back to play Connor Macleod, but he didn't want to do it. He was only in the first episode, so they conjured up this like he's his nephew,
Duncan Macleod.
Duncan, where he's so And then they end up in the last film together, Endgame.
Right.
An Endgame before Endgame. So without
Endgame without Thanos is not Endgame. and now just to tie this up. Was that Nick?
They tried to revive it again on Sci-Fi. They did another movie.
I see a whole bunch of things.
It's crazy. Now
it worked so well as a standalone story.
Yeah,
right.
And, sometimes it doesn't need to be a franchise.
Sometimes kind of like Jaws. Like the first one. That's all you need. You don't need to see anything else. You don't need to involve yourself in anything else. Now there is a reboot and a relaunch trying to occur, supposedly with Henry Cavill.
Oh, really?
Either in some type of a role. Now I don't know. I'm assuming he would be the Connor Macleod.
Mm-hmm.
Could be interesting depending on the director. Mm-hmm. The success of this will probably hinge on a decent script, because even Highlander was a decent script. It wasn't like the perfect script, but it was the director that really carried it. And I think this film, if they're going to reboot it, okay, I'm going with Henry Cavill. I like that choice.
It's already The Witcher. I mean, he already is.
Yeah, so he's already done the hair thing. He's already done the hair.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it would be benefit the film more if it were someone who was a huge fan of Highlander to begin with, or someone just totally coming in and with a fresh eye?
I think
just doing his own thing.
I think a fresh eye.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, if you get someone that's a fan, they're going to try and recreate it, which you could get a Force Awakens. You can kind of get a nostalgia thing, but
it's
already
been beat so much.
as long as they take care. What's that?
I said Blade Runner as an example. When they were going to do the reboot, I was like, how do you capture the feel of the the original? And
it was a brilliant sequel.
I liked it.
It was.
I love the sequel.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite movies of that year.
Fantastic. Yeah,
but it stood on its own. It didn't try to mimic the beginning. But so I think I always have.
It had a totally different palette.
Yeah,
but it was valid.
A remake maybe I could see happening. Sequels, man, stay away from it.
Stay away from that. A remake,
convoluted the story so much. It's like
you know what? You can even, as long as you stay in those rules, though, it makes sense. And that's again, we're going back to the heart of the story. If you stay in those rules,
and you know what? Clancy Brown is young enough. I think he's still,
he can do it.
He hasn't
put him in it. Get him off SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs. Have him, start working on that Kirby
voice extraordinary. At least put his voice in there somehow. You could de-age him. You could do whatever.
Please don't.
I don't even think you need to. He could be good as like a gray-haired.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah.
He's probably Connery's age now. What Connery was back then.
We don't want to do like Irishman. We don't want to do the age.
Yeah, no, we don't want to be
scarred. I'm scarred. I'm scarred from the Irishman. I don't need the Scotsman. The age.
So I think we've advocated for this film. Hopefully we've made the case that it is far from a cult film. Did we geek out about it too much? Guilty as charged. I absolutely did, but it's because we love this film so much, and we scraped off the outer shell of Roland.
Yes,
and got to the soft center. How many weeks does it take to get to the center of Roland? And we found
32. 32. Throwing out there for any fans.
He prefaced this by saying, "I'm going to nitpick, but I think we turned the tide on him. I think we kind of
absolutely.
I think we advocated for him, and he kind of got on board, which I appreciate as well. Even if he didn't like it, that's okay too. But what I'm going to say is give this film a look like that. Sure. If you're looking at it as cult and camp, you'll find that. Then you'll find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But like with me, when I watched it with new eyes from a critical aspect and taking out my fanboyness of it. I got to appreciate it actually as a really well-made film and something of a bigger scale film than I initially thought. I thought it was this low-budget thing that I really liked that no one knew about. So yeah, we encourage you to take another look at it. So that's going to do it for this episode, right? Or no? Eric's got one more thing.
I'm sorry, one more point. I'm sorry, Dean.
Make it.
I read a very before doing this week. I read a very good quote, and I think it's the general consensus of the film on Rotten Tomatoes, and they said that the great things about this film are also the bad things about the film. If you hate the bad things about this film, it also it makes the film great as well. So there is no middle ground with this movie. It's one of those movies where you either love it or you hate it, for whatever reason, and there it is. So
there you go.
So yeah,
and we've got 4. We're stamping 4 Lovitz on this one, so we're good. Not John Lovitz, but 4 Lovitz on it for Highlander. So thank you everybody for joining us. Join us online. Let us know. Did Highlander do it, or you just got no time for it? That's okay. Let us know at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to tweet at us as well, you can find us at 3324P. We've got a nice little short handle on Twitter to tweet at. So for Roland, for Nick, and for Eric, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind and rewind.